Hey guys, Eric here from Jeff Max Supply. Today we're going to talk about our layout templates. We're going to give you a little bit of a rundown on all the features, all the functions of those layout templates. One of the first things that you'll notice about the layout templates is that there is a lot of markings. Can be a little bit overwhelming or confusing if you don't know what those are for. There is numbers around, obviously pretty self-explanatory, but these are in order for you to utilize this as a clock. You've got your center marked here. So the great thing about that is that once you've got your workpiece, you can mark your center. You kind of know where to work from there. There are some triangles that we'll talk a little bit about here, but those are for alignment of additional templates as well. And then you'll notice both directions, both horizontally as well as vertically, you have your center mark. Those center marks give you the ability to figure out if you're going to do handles. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to calculate a handle out there or tried to calculate finding the center of a circle. Not the easiest thing to do, at least not for me. So it's math, you know? So the nice thing is that you've got your markings here. Pretty easy to do without having to draw chords on your circle and all those things as well. In addition, you've also got a 1/3 line as well as a quarter line, so you can kind of figure out and gauge what is a third of your circle, what is a quarter of your circle, etc. I've got a ton of character in my piece of wood here. It's a beautiful piece of wood. Got like some crotch here, some bark inclusion. We've got a couple of holes here, and then we've got kind of a weird knot here in the middle. Taking my layout template here, I'm able to see through and I can figure out, okay, this is the bottom of my mold, so we're envisioning this now. These side pieces are going to be where our epoxy is today. So we can decide, do we want to have a piece of wood that runs down the middle of our mold, have epoxy on both sides, not utilize the bark inclusions, the holes, the cracks. We get a very clear shot of exactly what it is that our clock or our round board cribbage template, we get a really good idea of what this is going to look like. If I were to want to offset this to one side, I have a almost 50-50, maybe it's 60-40 of epoxy on one side, wood on the other. If I were to flip this piece of wood around, now I'm including that bark inclusion. I'm including these two knot holes here, some of the cracking up here. I've got a little bit of epoxy on both sides here. I've got my bark inclusion and holes in the middle. I really have a completely different layout of a board. Let me show you also what we can do here. I can take this and I can say, okay, I don't want to utilize this much epoxy. Maybe I only want a thin epoxy river. I can take my pencil, trace the outside of my layout template. Now I know exactly where I need to cut in order to make this piece fit my mold. Now here's a tip and trick that I love about these layout templates. I'll take my dry erase marker and I'll mark the outside of my live edge. This now is going to be epoxy, but maybe I don't want all of that to be epoxy today. I want to move my layout template to this side and I want to fill half of this with another piece of wood from my same piece here. It's going to be a little bit challenging with the bark, so I'm going to use the other side here. Typically I would have this piece debarked before I was doing my layout, but I can take my dry erase marker after I've traced this side, and when I'm tracing with the dry erase marker, I'm actually, because your live edge is on an angle or has a slant to it, I'm actually going to mark the outside of my live edge as opposed to the top edge. Now you'll see that I have my entire piece marked here. I know that I'm only dealing with about a 1/2 inch river. The layout template really helps you utilize your piece. This also helps with my epoxy calculation. I can take my tape measure, I can measure this river, and I can calculate exactly how big it's going to be. I love that because I know exactly like what the board is going to look like then. That's like my favorite part about it is like, you know, like, oh, my river is going to be that big. It's actually wicked. We can even take this one step further and I can kind of see what it's going to look like with black epoxy. Maybe not the best example, but it gives me a pretty good idea. So I've got my White Ball X60s here. These are a great product, very similar to like an extra thick shop towel or paper towel. Heavy duty, they don't tear, they don't rip. I'm going to utilize this, take off my dry erase marker. Just like that, my template is clean. Come in a nice big pack. But let's say that I want to take an epoxy inlay in the middle. These corners line up perfectly with most of our square inlay templates. So when we put this square inlay template, we can line it up with those corners. Now know that that is exactly in the center of our round layout template. I'm just going to take my pencil. I'm going to mark those outside corners. You can see my corners marked here on my board. I know that snowflake now is perfectly centered. If I was smart, which I'm not, mark the center of my clock. I now know where the shaft for my hands is going to go through that board. I know exactly where the middle of my clock still is. So that is the utilization of those corners on both the rectangle as well as the round layout template. Kyle's gonna have no eraser left on his pencil. Sorry, Kyle. So with the rectangle layout template, let's just say that we want our river right in the middle of this board. We wanna make a traditional river style board. Line it up with my edges, trace my line here, trace my line across the top so I know where I need to cut. Taking my dry erase marker, now I can line it up on the other side. So I'll slide this out just a bit until I get my desired river. If I trace the outside again, about where I think that live edge ends, I know exactly what my river and my board is going to look like. Got wider at the top, wider at the bottom due to those humps in the board. I don't know if you can see my pencil lines here or not, but I know that I need to cut here and here. So I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch of material in the middle. The nice thing is though, I've still got some cutoff down here that I can use, so we're maximizing the yield out of this piece of wood. Let's say we want to get really funky with this board. I can take it, I can put it on an angle. Say I want to go at kind of a 45-degree angle and I want to start at a corner and end at a corner. I can line these corners of this layout template up exactly with the corners of the live edge, trace that out, and I know exactly how it's going to look in my mold. If I want to do a piece this way, at a 45, and then take my layout template. So now we've got the wood in this top corner, take this corner down here and go here. So use the layout template to figure out exactly what you want your board to look like. Let's say that you're not a big fan of epoxy. Understand. Let's say that you want to make serving boards as opposed to epoxy boards, etc., etc. If I want to do a solid wood serving board that's got dimensional edges on it, I mark the outside of my board, easy enough, cut the live edge off. Let's say I want to make a solid wood serving board with a handle. I'm going to butt it up against our handle template. And now I know down here we've got a knot we may or may not want to include. Not a lot of spalting in this piece there. However, move it down here. All of this spalting here, some of this spalting up there. I've also avoided that knot. Don't want to epoxy it. Don't want to use CA glue. Understandable, now I've completely avoided it. Trace the outline of my organic handle template here. Take my straight lines. Complete this side, complete this side. I've got a complete solid wood, square edge board with a handle. I've included all of this spalting. We're avoiding the knot here so that we don't have to epoxy, we don't have to do anything there, no CA glue. So even if you're not an epoxy woodworker, these layout templates are great. One of the things you'll notice why I wanted to cut the live edge off this piece, you can see the cracking here, that's this edge cracking or checking. I probably want to avoid that. I don't want to include that. It's going to create some nightmares that maybe I don't want to deal with on that particular board. The last feature that I'm going to talk about with this rectangle, you'll notice the holes near the corners. We've got center locator on this as well. We've got a third as well as a quarter. These are inset 1 inch. So if you want to inset your handles 1 inch, you don't have any sort of handle layout template, we can mark the outline of our board. We can mark in 1 inch a line. We can then mark our center line, and we know exactly where we can put our handles. This being center, makes it very, very easy to put a set of cabinet poles on as a handle as well. I love putting rubber feet on the bottoms of my charcuterie boards. I think it adds to the overall character of the board. It makes it look like a more high-end product, stops from scratching your customer's counter, and it elevates it to give it that floating look. Put it on the bottom of my piece now, so we're not working on the top, we're working on the bottom. Put it on the bottom, line it up, mark 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, and 1 inch. I know exactly now the location of my 4 feet on that board. I can utilize that layout template, and it allows me the ability to mark my feet and do really everything I want to do without having a bunch of tools in the shop. The reason that these templates are a little bit smaller than the inside of the mold is so that you can utilize this. Once your piece pops out of the mold, tape your template down, use your router with a flush trim bit again, and you can actually get your perfect circle, you can get your perfect rectangle, flush it up, you get that perfect shape every time. So for me, one of my favorite templates to own, probably one of my favorite things that I have in the shop as a board maker myself. They're thick, they're sturdy, even though there's numbers on this thing, as long as you're careful with it, you're not gonna break it. You can utilize a putty knife to peel those up gently. Any questions on the layout templates, reach out to us. Hopefully this allows you the ability to figure out exactly what a board is gonna look like on the inside of your mold. Hopefully this helps you create more beautiful projects in your shop. I'm Jeff from Eric's Supply. Nope, that's not it. Like and subscribe. Don't forget.